What if I revealed that each month, representatives from 60 of the planet's most powerful central banks convene in a secure Swiss facility to architect a future that could fundamentally alter the very fabric of our financial lives? Behind those closed doors, beyond the reach of any camera or journalist, these discussions unfold in absolute secrecy. Yet the decisions made within those marble-floored conference rooms in Basel possess the power to redefine the value of every single dollar you hold. Let that sink in. Consider this critical question. When did you last genuinely worry about the future acceptance of the US dollar? The thought has likely never crossed your mind. This unwavering confidence is a product of decades of unchallenged dollar supremacy, a reality so ingrained we can barely fathom an alternative. But what if those central bankers, meeting in clandestine sessions, are meticulously planning for exactly that scenario? A world where the US dollar is no longer the undisputed global standard. These are not routine monetary policy debates over interest rates that merely tweak our credit card payments. An analysis of the Bank for International Settlement's own internal schedules reveals a startling truth. These are high-stakes crisis preparation sessions, where financial leaders wargame scenarios once deemed impossible just 5 years ago. The ultimate nightmare they are preparing for: a catastrophic loss of the US dollar's global reserve status within the coming decade. And here is the critical data point. Figures like Christine Lagarde and Jerome Powell are no longer debating if this seismic shift will occur. Their entire focus has shifted to planning for when it inevitably does. Declassified documents from central banking conferences confirm that these institutions have already drafted detailed contingency plans to conduct global trade entirely outside the US dollar system. Our own government is fully aware of this impending shift. Yet, this critical intelligence is conspicuously absent from mainstream news broadcasts. If you require proof that this has moved beyond mere theory, consider the following. The World Gold Council's 2025 survey indicates that a staggering 73% of central banks are actively planning to divest from their dollar reserves over the next 5 years. Why make such a coordinated move unless you anticipate a dramatic devaluation? Furthermore, the Bank for International Settlements is now issuing direct guidance to its member institutions on developing viable dollar alternatives through their dedicated Innovation Hub projects. These are not abstract academic exercises. They are operational blueprints for transitioning away from the financial architecture that currently dictates the price of our fuel, our food, and our ability to travel. You will not find these preparations detailed in your daily newsfeed, as a premature disclosure would risk igniting the very financial panic these measures are designed to contain. However, the evidence is irrefutably present for those who know where to conduct their analysis. And this is the point of critical concern. The discourse among central bank governors has shifted away from the hypothetical. An examination of recent Federal Reserve meeting minutes reveals a stark change in tone. Private discussions are no longer about exploring possibilities. They are now focused on coordinating precise implementation timelines. When the custodians of global finance cease asking what if and begin asking how soon, it is a signal that demands our undivided attention. Recall the initial emergence of Bitcoin, when digital currency was widely dismissed as a fringe internet experiment. Well, during that period of public dismissal, the world's central banks were covertly engineering something infinitely more powerful. A system designed with one primary objective: to render the US dollar entirely optional. At this very moment in China, millions are conducting daily transactions, purchasing coffee and paying for transit, and even receiving their state salaries, with a currency that exists only as digital code. The People's Bank of China reports that the digital yuan has already processed transactions valued at over 7 trillion yuan. That equates to nearly $1 trillion circulating through a financial ecosystem that operates entirely outside the Western banking system. To grasp the sheer velocity of this change, in a mere 12 months, the volume of digital yuan transactions nearly quadrupled, surging from 1.88 trillion to 7 trillion yuan, a figure confirmed by People's Bank of China Deputy Governor Lulek. Across 17 provinces, workers now draw their salaries in this new digital currency, while university students settle tuition fees with a simple tap of their phones. A complete parallel financial system has materialized while many of us were still debating the security of sending $20 on Venmo. But the most alarming data point is this. The phenomenon is not isolated to China. Inside the European Central Bank, the development timeline for a digital euro has been aggressively accelerated, moving far faster than their public statements would suggest. While our attention is directed towards headlines about inflation, technical teams in Frankfurt are actively stress testing the infrastructure required to run the entire European economy on programmable money. It is imperative to analyze the personal ramifications of this shift. Currently, when we need to transfer funds across international borders, we are shackled by exorbitant fees and agonizing multi-day delays for simple transfers. In stark contrast, these emergent systems execute cross-continental transactions in mere seconds. An analysis from the Bank for International Settlements reveals a critical development. Their Mbridge project has now achieved a minimum viable product stage, a chilling milestone indicating it is fully operational for live, real-time transactions between central banks. And here is the deeply unsettling reality. Russia and Iran are already executing massive energy deals through cryptocurrency frameworks engineered with a single purpose: to circumvent our currency entirely. We are witnessing billion-dollar commodity flows being rerouted through a financial architecture that operates as if the dollar is completely irrelevant. The BRICS nations have unveiled their Bridge payment platform, a strategic network meticulously designed to link member states while completely bypassing the SWIFT system that underpins our global financial control. Brazil's payment infrastructure is now directly integrated with India's networks, China's digital currency, and Russia's financial backbone. 23 nations are already conducting international payments through frameworks where the dollar is not just optional, it's becoming obsolete. It is simply not required. But the truly alarming factor, the one that renders this revolution unstoppable, is the relentless advancement of their technology, while our own banking system is fundamentally frozen in the 1970s. Consider this critical vulnerability. Our international wire transfers still rely on messaging protocols conceived in an era before the internet even existed. These new platforms, by contrast, leverage artificial intelligence and quantum cryptography, achieving a level of security our legacy banks cannot possibly replicate. And here's a fact that should be profoundly disturbing. The central banks orchestrating this shift have realized that digital currencies are not merely a substitute for existing money. They are a key to unlocking entirely new forms of economic interaction. When currency is reduced to programmable code, the entity that controls the code dictates the flow of global commerce. And the unavoidable truth is, right now, that entity is not America. A critical question arises. Can you identify the economic bloc that encompasses 45% of the world's population and commands 28% of global GDP? If your answer is BRICS, then you possess a level of awareness lost on most Americans, who remain oblivious to this bloc's immense power and its explicit agenda to dismantle the dollar's global dominance. Now, consider this ominous development. The very nation that was the architect of the petrodollar system, the one that agreed to trade its oil exclusively in dollars, Saudi Arabia, is now an active participant in payment architectures engineered to circumvent the dollar entirely. When the linchpin of our currency's global supremacy begins constructing escape routes, what signal does that send? Analyze this potential scenario. You are planning a trip to Europe next year, operating under the assumption that your dollars will be universally accepted. But what happens when you arrive? Only to find that European merchants now favor euros to escape the burdensome fees and systemic delays inherent in dollar-based transactions. What if the world's reserve currency is no longer the world's preference? The data from the Atlantic Council's CBDC tracker paints a stark picture. BRICS nations are already executing over $100 billion in annual energy trades that completely bypass the dollar system. Russia, for instance, sells oil to China for yuan, which is then immediately reinvested into Chinese manufacturing. Similarly, India settles its Russian oil imports in rupees, which Russia then uses to procure Indian pharmaceuticals. These are self-contained, closed-loop economic circuits operating entirely outside the financial infrastructure we depend on. But the most alarming revelation is this. Their coordination now extends into the realm of military financial defense strategies. The BRICS bloc is actively conducting joint war games, simulating synchronized defenses against financial sanctions and strategic currency attacks. The analysis is clear. They are not merely constructing an alternative monetary system. They are actively preparing to defend it against what they perceive as inevitable economic warfare. This alliance has systematically erected a parallel financial infrastructure, a mirror image of Western institutions. Their new development bank, based on its own official reports, has already committed $200 billion to project financing that is explicitly non-dollar denominated. Furthermore, the Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank settles transactions via channels that are completely independent of our networks. Critical infrastructure, roads, bridges, power grids, is materializing across 3 continents, all funded by capital that never once passes through an American institution. If you wish to grasp the sheer gravity of this shift, observe this. International trade agreements are now incorporating non-dollar settlement clauses not as an option, but as a standard provision. Our nation's capacity to exert influence over global trade via dollar supremacy is being systematically dismantled, one bilateral agreement at a time. But the most chilling piece of coordinated strategy is yet to come. According to meticulously compiled surveys from the World Gold Council, the BRICS nations, a coordinated strategy is unfolding as central banks synchronize their gold acquisitions, deliberately engineered to reshape global reserve holdings. In a stark signal, for the 3rd year running, over 1,000 tons of gold were amassed in 2024 alone. This is no coincidence. When a single central bank bolsters its gold reserves, a cascade of others follows on a synchronized schedule, a calculated move to magnify the shockwaves through the market. An alarming $2 trillion in annual trade now bypasses the dollar entirely, processed through regional commodity platforms. We're talking about the fundamental resources of our lives, the oil warming our homes, the food on our shelves, the very components inside our smartphones. Increasingly, these essential goods are exchanged in systems where the dollar has been rendered obsolete. Each new bilateral pact, every integrated payment network, represents another brick in this wall. Every currency swap agreement methodically severs another tie to dollar reliance. Make no mistake, this isn't merely about creating alternatives to our financial framework. They are architecting a completely parallel global economic infrastructure, one designed to function entirely beyond the reach of American influence and control. Consider a chilling scenario. You arrive at work tomorrow to find your employer has re-engineered its entire global operation to circumvent the dollar. This isn't a hypothetical. It is the unfolding reality. And the corporations executing this pivot are not only severing their reliance on America's financial system, they are reaping millions in savings. Let me provide a tangible example that will bring this threat into sharp focus. Leading German automotive giants are systematically dismantling billion-dollar supply contracts with their Chinese counterparts, reconfiguring them for settlement exclusively in euros and yuan. These are not minor experimental agreements. We are witnessing entire production lines, for the very electric vehicle you may soon purchase, now functioning within a financial ecosystem that has completely excised the dollar. The financial motive is staggering. The elimination of currency conversion fees is generating savings that amount to hundreds of millions of dollars each year. Here is the critical implication for every one of us. When global manufacturing titans discover greater efficiency by abandoning the dollar, what becomes of the worldwide demand for our currency? And as that global demand plummets, what is the inevitable consequence for the value of the money in our own pockets? Nowhere is this tectonic shift more pronounced than in the global energy markets. This directly impacts the price you see at the pump. Energy trade analyses reveal a startling figure. Russia's energy sales to China and India now surpass $100 billion a year, all settled outside the dollar system. The very fuel being pumped into your vehicle may have been acquired using yuan or rupees, entirely circumventing the dollar-denominated framework that once secured American leverage over global energy prices. Now, consider the implications for our retirement accounts, for our children's education funds. Around the globe, central banks are executing a radical overhaul of their reserve strategies, a pivot with direct and severe consequences for our investments. The World Gold Council's data confirms this. Poland, in a mere 2-year span, escalated its gold holdings from 13 to 20% of its reserves. Turkey, Kazakhstan, and the Czech Republic are mirroring this aggressive pattern. This is not a gradual portfolio rebalancing. This is a rapid, structural exodus from the very dollar-denominated assets that form the bedrock of our 401ks. The African Development Bank has greenlit $50 billion for infrastructure projects, with financing explicitly engineered to eliminate any need for the dollar. Roads, power grids, and telecommunication networks spanning an entire continent, all being constructed with capital that exists completely outside the financial architecture our own investments rely upon. Now for a development that may be even more unsettling. Global shipping conglomerates have discovered that conducting business in a multitude of currencies is not merely feasible, it is significantly more profitable. The vessel delivering merchandise to your local retailer is likely being paid in euros, yuan, or any of a dozen other currencies, thereby erasing the dollar conversion fees that were once embedded in the price of every single product. The contagion of this shift is even spreading to academia. Prominent European and Asian universities are now managing their entire financial ecosystems without any interaction with the dollar-based system. The very international education your children may one day seek could be governed by financial arrangements where the dollar is demoted to just one choice among many. In the shadows, corporate treasuries are re-architecting their operations for this new multi-currency world. Corporations with major stakes in BRICS nations are now running partitioned cash management systems, meticulously optimized for operations in local currencies. These parallel financial structures are designed as a failsafe, ready to function seamlessly should the dollar-based system falter, become inaccessible, or prove financially crippling. Inside the financial world, experts are witnessing a paradigm shift in thinking that should alarm every single American. Just 5 years ago, any transaction not in dollars demanded a special justification. Now, the burden of proof has reversed. Dollar-based transactions must now be defended against cheaper, more efficient alternatives. The fractures in the foundation of dollar supremacy are no longer a distant threat. They are a present reality. These are not abstract theories. They are operational realities with dire implications for the prices we pay, the investments we hold, and the economic future our children are set to inherit. While our attention has been consumed by domestic politics and the echo chambers of social media, a silent construction has been underway across 3 continents, erecting the backbone of a financial system engineered to operate entirely without our dollars. The chilling truth is, most Americans are utterly oblivious to its existence. Deep beneath the Indian Ocean, fiber optic cables are being methodically laid along strategic routes, connecting Asia, Africa, and the Middle East, while conspicuously bypassing traditional Western communication hubs. Make no mistake, these are not mere internet cables. They are the new financial arteries, meticulously designed to pump currency transactions and trade settlements through networks completely independent of American infrastructure. Let us be perfectly clear about what this means for us at this very moment. A significant portion of international transactions has historically flowed through systems America can monitor or influence. These emerging networks, however, are carving out clandestine pathways for global commerce that completely evade American oversight. A clinical analysis reveals a systematic erosion of our nation's ability to track or influence international capital flows. In Singapore, a prime example is unfolding. Asia's largest clearing and settlement facility is rising from reclaimed land. Upon its completion, this monolithic structure will process international transactions valued at trillions of dollars annually, without ever routing through New York or London. The next time we question the delays and exorbitant costs of our international transfers, we must confront the fact that other nations are engineering systems that clear trades in yuan, rupees, and dozens of other currencies in real time. Hong Kong's financial district has undergone a quiet but profound transformation. now dominated by data centers that form the technical heart of cross-border payment systems that have no need for the dollar. According to project reports from the Bank for International Settlements, these facilities maintain instantaneous, real-time connections to central banks throughout Asia and the Middle East, forging an autonomous settlement network that operates 24 hours a day, entirely outside our sphere of influence. The Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank inaugurated its new settlement facility with representatives from 57 countries, a clear celebration of systems that finance international projects without involving traditional Western institutions. The roads, bridges, and power plants materializing across Asia and Africa are being funded through mechanisms that now treat the dollar as merely optional rather than essential. Even the physical commodity infrastructure is being fundamentally redesigned for multi-currency operations, a strategic shift with direct and severe consequences for the prices we all pay. Strategic petroleum reserves under construction in the United Arab Emirates are being engineered to price and settle oil transactions in yuan, euros, or various local currencies. These facilities are not just for storage. They are creating new physical markets where energy can be traded completely detached from dollar pricing, directly threatening the cost of our gasoline. The logistical chains themselves are being rewired. Port facilities across Southeast Asia are installing cargo tracking and settlement systems that integrate seamlessly with these regional currency networks. This means the very shipping container bringing goods to our local store can be released and paid for in local currencies, with automatic conversions handled by systems that never once interact with dollar-based infrastructure. The insurance markets have undergone their own silent, seismic revolution, one that directly undermines our economic security. Consider this alarming paradox. Lloyd's of London now offers policies that shield Asian companies from the volatility of the dollar rather than the risks of their own currencies. This is a complete inversion of financial logic, a stark signal of global finance's dramatic pivot away from dollar-centric models. The sheer scale of investment in this parallel infrastructure should be a matter of grave concern for every American. A sober analysis of conservative estimates reveals that over $200 billion has already been committed to financial infrastructure projects with the explicit goal of reducing dollar dependence. This is not speculative capital. It is pragmatic, targeted spending on systems that are not just planned, but are already fully operational. What makes this infrastructure revolution seemingly unstoppable is its cold, practical necessity. As trade volumes between non-Western economies continue to surge, the infrastructure required to support that commerce must materialize. And since existing systems are architected around dollar dominance, it is an inevitable economic outcome that new infrastructure emerges to service relationships that have no need for American participation. The foundation for a post-dollar financial system is not being planned. It is being built. And with every cable laid, every server activated, and every facility brought online, global dependence on the monetary system that underpins our economic way of life is systematically diminished. Have you detected the ominous shift in financial discourse? The debate is no longer whether the dollar's supremacy will end, but a stark calculation of when and how rapidly it will unravel. This subtle alteration in terminology signals a profound and irreversible turning point. We have crossed a Rubicon. The outcome is no longer in question, merely its timing. Analyze the recent declarations from central bank governors across the globe. They are no longer engaging in theoretical discussions about alternatives to the dollar. Observe the data points. Poland's central bank declares an unwavering commitment to reaching 20% gold reserves by a fixed date. China articulates its digital yuan interoperability goals with surgical precision. Brazil delineates explicit schedules for facilitating trade with the real and peso. These are no longer distant ambitions. They are concrete, operational timelines. Here is a fact that demands immediate scrutiny. According to the Atlantic Council CBDC tracker, by 2026, the central bank digital currencies of more than 40 nations will achieve seamless interoperability. This is not a mere prediction. It is a statement of fact, representing technical specifications that have already been tested, validated, and proven. While we grapple with the novelties of consumer payment systems, 40 nations are coordinating the launch of monetary architectures specifically designed to operate independently of the dollar. The curriculum for global monetary officials has undergone a fundamental and alarming transformation, a shift that should deeply trouble every citizen. Central bankers are now being trained to manage multi-currency transition scenarios and to preserve economic stability amidst a rebalancing of reserve currencies. They are not studying theoretical models. They are preparing for what is now considered an expected reality. In fact, international trade agreements signed within the last 18 months now include non-dollar settlement clauses as standard procedure, not as special accommodations. Contemplate the ramifications for our economic future. The world is systematically defaulting to non-dollar arrangements, where using the dollar now requires special justification. Emergency financial protocols have been established that can activate dollar-free operations within a matter of hours, a stark contrast to the months previously required. The BRICS nations are maintaining active currency swap facilities and coordinated intervention mechanisms poised to provide critical liquidity during a financial system transition. To be clear, these are not theoretical constructs. They are fully operational systems, routinely tested and refined through coordinated drills. Observe the dramatic evolution in crisis simulations. Just 3 years ago, central banks were conducting stress tests predicated on the question, how would our economy endure if the dollar-based system were to become unavailable? Today's simulations begin from a fundamentally different and more ominous starting point. They operate under the assumption that dollar alternatives are already viable, focusing instead on optimizing the transition between various monetary frameworks. Yet, what is perhaps most revealing is what officials no longer say. Vanished are the diplomatic reassurances about upholding dollar-centric relationships. Absent are the forceful declarations about preserving the existing international financial architecture. In their place, central bankers now describe post-dollar arrangements with the same dispassionate, analytical tone once reserved for discussing routine interest rate adjustments. This change in tone is not arbitrary. It mirrors an economic reality that has now become irreversible. When alternative payment systems are capable of handling trillions in annual volume, and when emergency protocols are in place to ensure stability during a monetary transition, when entire trade partnerships can operate profitably outside the dollar framework, the very existence of this infrastructure creates its own inexorable gravitational pull. We have reached a critical juncture where dismantling these alternatives would be more disruptive than fully implementing them. The question is no longer whether the dollar will lose its global preeminence. It is now a question of how swiftly the transition will occur, and whether America can successfully adapt to a world where its currency is just one option among a multitude of others. Envision waking up in the year 2030 only to find that international commerce operates with such efficiency without the dollar that its use has become as anachronistic as sending a fax. This is not a work of science fiction. It is the logical and inevitable outcome of trends currently reshaping global finance, largely unnoticed by the American public. Consider planning that European vacation you have meticulously saved for. Instead of contending with the complexities of exchange rates and foreign transaction fees, you find your bank provides instantaneous currency conversion at rates far more favorable than anything currently available. European merchants now prefer local currency transactions, as they are faster and more cost-effective than dollar-based payments. Your own travel is enhanced precisely because you are no longer shackled to a monetary system engineered for American convenience, rather than global efficiency. Consider this critical data point. A Brazilian coffee exporter is compensated in reais by a German importer, and those funds are then instantly redeployed to procure equipment from India. The entire chain of settlement completes in under 3 minutes, completely circumventing any dollar-based conversion. This transaction was orchestrated by supply chain applications that autonomously optimize currency routes, calculating the most efficient payment path through a sprawling digital network that now interconnects 4 continents. What is the chilling implication for our daily existence? The very coffee in our morning cups, the components embedded in our smartphones, the energy that sustains our homes are all now flowing through commercial arteries where the dollar is merely an option, no longer an essential component. This analysis does not predict the dollar's disappearance, but rather its demotion from the privileged position that has underwritten the American economic standard of living for decades. Simultaneously, central banks are now operating with a level of coordination that previous generations would have found inconceivable. Should market stress manifest in Asian currency sectors, automated stabilization protocols are triggered across multiple nations instantaneously. Digital currency flows are recalibrated in real time, governed by algorithmic coordination between central banks that exchange information at the speed of light. Let us analyze the direct consequences of this coordination for our personal investments and savings. On the surface, currency markets gain stability, as they are no longer beholden to the policy decisions of any single nation, including the United States. Our retirement portfolios may benefit from this reduced currency volatility, but this comes at a cost. They become critically vulnerable to systemic shifts away from dollar-denominated assets. Regional economic blocs are now achieving a depth of integration that was structurally impossible under the old dollar hegemony. Consider the data. Southeast Asian manufacturers are sourcing components from Latin American suppliers through currency arrangements that adapt algorithmically to trade flows. African infrastructure projects are now receiving financing from Asian development banks, utilizing mechanisms engineered for long-term strategic partnerships, not for American financial convenience. This transformation is not merely about technical efficiency. It represents a fundamental shift in economic leverage, one that directly corrodes our nation's global influence. Nations that were once considered minor players, with minimal input into global monetary policy, are now participating as equal partners in currency frameworks designed to serve their own strategic interests, not American priorities. International commodity markets are rapidly evolving into sophisticated, multi-currency ecosystems, where pricing is dictated by raw supply and demand, not by strategic currency manipulation. The unavoidable consequence is that the prices we pay for gasoline, food, and consumer goods will be far more directly tethered to real economic forces, rather than the monetary policy decisions made in Washington. This new financial architecture has not eliminated the dollar, but it has decisively ended its era of exclusive dominance. American currency will retain its importance for specific transactions, but it is being relegated to one option among many, rather than the sole practical choice for global commerce. For us, the calculus is stark. America forfeits significant economic advantages in exchange for access to a more efficient global system. The factor that renders this transformation unstoppable is its alignment with the interests of too many actors across too many nations. Businesses reduce costs on currency conversion. Governments reclaim monetary sovereignty. Central banks achieve a higher capacity for coordination. Global citizens benefit from a more streamlined international commerce. The evidence is pervasive for those who know how to interpret the signals. Each central bank digital currency implementation, every bilateral trade agreement containing local currency provisions, every infrastructure project financed through non-dollar mechanisms, each one pushes the global economy inexorably toward this multipolar reality. The transition to a post-dollar world is not a distant contingency that might occur one day. It is the operational reality of today, a reality that most Americans have simply failed to recognize. This new global financial order is already materializing around us, one transaction at a time. Therefore, the question is not if this transformation will impact our economic future. It is whether we will recognize it in time to successfully adapt. Comprehending these shifts is not an exercise in fear. It is a mandate for awareness. The greater our understanding of the unfolding dynamics, the better our capacity to navigate the perilous financial world that is solidifying around us.